Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri, and I love to talk about talent and technology in this particular show. And today, of course, we have got two guests for you who are going to talk to you about the opportunities that are coming up in India. And to begin with, one of the things that caught my attention is the Financial Times actually talking about India becoming a hub for AI work. So, is that true? Is that not true? Let's examine this in greater detail in our talent and tech show. Thank you so much for being here. Let me introduce my two guests. Kamal Karant, he is the co-founder of Xfino, and Prasad Rajapan, who is the founder of Zing HR. And Zing HR has also, been kind enough to sponsor this conversation. So thank you so much. And let's get started with, what we see as the headline that caught your attention. And I'm going to sort of get the ball rolling by saying that, I was reading about the Microsoft head of Microsoft India and South Asia, Puneet Chandoki, talks about the most exciting market in the world for technology is going to be India. Is that, would you think that that's true? What do you sort of have to say about it? What is a headline that caught your attention? Kamal, if you unmute yourself and tell us what do you think is the headline that caught your attention this week?
Yeah, for me, I think it is about Indian tech talent overtaking, China in terms of sheer numbers. And being in India, we all like numbers, and if we don't state numbers, we feel bad. So I guess what 7 million Chinese software, workers to about India overtaking from 6.5 million. I think that's the next thing that's going to catch everybody's attention. We always knew we had this scale, but I think when we overtake the kind of a behemoth like China in terms of knowledge workers in tech, it is going to make it even more interesting for me.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Karan. Kamal, let's go with what Prasad you noticed.
I think I was quite happy to see OpenAI almost acquiring the rock sector, uh, which also throws two things. Like I said, there's a huge technology or deep technology companies emerging out of India. I think latest statistics says about 4,000 deep tech startups are in India, which means India is now trying to build their own tech stack, and there are a lot of other companies and startups doing that. So I think India will become an epicenter for the AI, Gen AI sort of thing, and the futures to come.
Even more fascinating, what is even more fascinating is that Microsoft is investing $3.7 billion, and Amazon is adding that to another 12.7 billion by the year 2030 in cloud infrastructure. So very clearly there's a lot which is happening in terms of not just data centers but work in deep tech, AI, and that's a great place, which is a good segue into what we want to discuss today. So, when you think about tech talent in India, Kamal, how would you classify tech talent? What do you think are the places where we have tech talent? What is your classification?
Abhijit, we've looked at tech talent, the whole 6.5 million tech talent in what we call as six tech cohorts, and we've put it in the form of what we call as aspirational pyramid. That means somebody who enters the job market, where are they likely to get a job if, let's say, they didn't have the best of the skills? So if you look at bottom of the pyramid would be non-tech companies having tech workers. They could be banks, they could be insurance companies, public sectors, pharma companies, and in some of the conglomerates, you can find anywhere between 5 to 10,000 tech workers. So whom you would have never thought of will have that many tech workers. Banks,
Really, give me
each
an
one of
example. Give me an example of a employer
it
like
could
that.
be Reliance, it could be Adani. If you look at all these kind of companies, they all have thousands of tech workers, with them today, right? So that's an example. You have large healthcare, firms. You have pharma companies, who have them possibly in hundreds. The banks, whether it's your HDFCs, Kotak banks, ICICI, all of them have close to almost 1,000 tech workers, directly employed by them. So these are examples of non-tech companies having tech workers. Then
Hmm.
you have the IT services companies, and there again you have three kinds. One is your mid-tier companies, who are, let's say, when I say mid-tier, only from the size of employees that they have is what we call as mid-tier, and maybe their turnover too. Then you have the Indian bellwethers, call them Infosys, Wipro, TCS kind of companies. Then you have the multinational IT services companies like Accenture, IBMs, and Capgemini. So if you look at, that's the largest tech cohort, which employs close to almost 2.3 million workers in India and growing. And one significant part of this tech cohort is this tech cohort of IT services builds talent. That means they hire thousands of freshers and train them to become job ready. So that's the uniqueness of this tech cohort. Then you have the big four, or it could be even Big Ten. The consulting companies, besides consulting, are also become huge tech shops where they deploy a higher tech talent and deploy them to our client places. So that's a significant number as well. And you'd be surprised that there are close to 250,000 workers working for the Big Four as tech workers today. Then you have what you call as the GCCs, as we call them, the global capability centers. They used to be called captives, in the past. So today we call them global capability centers. We have 1,600 plus companies like that. It could be companies like Novartis, Walmart, who all have their tech centers in India, which employ close to 1.6 million tech workers and growing at close to 10 to 15%. And last year, about 40 such new GCCs came to India. In a good year, 80 such companies come. In a not so good year, the COVID year was possibly the worst, where we still had 20 new GCCs coming to India. So last year 40 came. So that's a growing space, and for the first time last year we saw GCCs hiring more workers, more technology workers than IT services companies. I'll bet only by about 10,000, but it's a kind of a shifting of power in a way in terms of hiring that we saw. And above GCC is what we call as the product companies, your FANG and many other deep tech companies which are there in India, which employ close to about 1.5 million workers, so technology workers. And above that is what we call as startups. Though I think at this point of time, there's a kind of funding winter, but still close to 500,000, technology workers work in startups. So this is what I call as the six tech cohorts in which, Indian IT tech landscape is today employed.
Thank you, Kamal. Prasad, when you look at these six, would that also sort of match the way that you visualize it and the way, what's your experience as you see it on the ground?
No, I think it's a nice pyramid. Kamal said, I being from the product side, I always see from the top. I think one good thing is happening. A lot of these people who are working in the big four or big five or big 10 are now becoming product startups. Thanks to the movement by the government of India for to encourage startups, I think a lot of these people who were originally in either large companies like Infosys or Wipros of the world are getting into the startup world. A lot of people are now getting associated with the GCCs too, and we have the opportunity of working with a couple of GCCs. So I think in overall it is a good healthy thing because even the top of the pyramid is getting a lot of attraction, and I see this trend increasing day by day. And let me tell you, Abhijit, don't be surprised if a lot of new age tech products come from India because the talent was always there in India. What was not there was the startup ecosystem. Like Kamal said, maybe we are still not reached there, but I think a lot of startups, incubators, not only by Microsofts and Amazons of the world, a lot of companies having startups. Like I work with Atal Incubation Center. Government of India has had their own startups. Fantastic startup ecosystem emerging. So I think quite positive about how tech startups will start ruling from here. And I'm not sure whether the numbers with India and China, but I'm very confident that India is going to be one of the main supplier of tech solutions to the world.
And I would sort of add one more dimension to this entire thing, that when you look at the demographic distribution, if you
Mhm.
look at the age distribution of every country across the planet, when you look at that, I think the next 20 years or 30 years is going to belong to India for another big reason, which is demographics, which is that, as you see, the working age population is going to be in coming in from India, and a couple of a handful of other places, while the rest of the world is graying. And so when you look at that, is there an opportunity, Kamal, that you see where India is going to become the supplier of tech talent for the world? Is that a reasonable assumption that we can think about?
Absolutely, no exaggeration at all. And it's already happening, Abhijit. We know the large diaspora, which are already Indian diaspora, which are already then across the world. But just to share some data with you, last year alone, we saw 114,000 software engineers or tech workers from India migrating overseas. Of course, we also saw 72,000 Indians coming back for various reasons. They may not be necessarily the same amongst the 114,000, but we're still talking about 40,000 plus Indian technology workers going to US, Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and Middle East. These are the top destinations for Indian IT workers. So that's the number, 40,000 people. And you can imagine the friction that we already have in the six tech cohorts when 40,000 people in the 44 to 12 years experience range go out. So that's one aspect of how we already become not only a country where we are attracting investments for people to come here to access the tech talent, but we're also supplying the tech talent required to the world when they want it near shore. The second aspect, Abhijit, to that is how we are building the talent. Today, close to 800,000 engineers pass out of India, of which 230,000 are computer science graduates. And that's growing. 2 years ago, the computer science graduates passing out was about 200,000. Now it's 230,000. So that's growing. So I think we still have a scale of engineers passing out, which is unimaginable and unmatchable as far as the scale is concerned. So yeah, the long answer is yes, we're already doing it, and we have the scale to do it and the skills to do it as well.
Prasad, what is your view?
I think tech talent coming, I just want to draw an attention to while the intelligence is there. I think in this part of the world, data sets is becoming a decider whether we have the right models coming up. It's not the data, but I think India and all developed countries started generating data quite late compared to the developed countries. So test whether it's an open AI or any new age technologies, uh, credible data sets or right sampling is becoming one hindrance. Could be one hindrance. I feel it come in the way of actually coming out products. So I think with the new boundaryless organizations or world, I think we should be able to merge data from various other developing countries like Southeast Asia or Africa and pick up and create models, which could really again cater to almost like three-fourths of the world's population. Yeah. So I'm very excited about what AI talent can come from India, what practical solutions it can give, and it goes beyond just the tech of hiring and all those things. And I've seen a lot of tech startups who are going to create livelihoods, change the economic distribution of the landscape. Yeah.
We are therefore looking at from all what you talked about so far, both of you, we are definitely saying that India is going to become a supplier of technology talent for the world for sure, and it's driven by just Asia numbers. I mean, 230,000 engineers getting minted every year, and that's a phenomenal number, which is probably bigger than what any other country in the world is doing. But also along with that, the opportunity for growth, which is going to come from a fairly young population. When you have a young population, what it means is that the consumption patterns are also higher. So people are buying more number of things, and therefore it's not surprising that you get to see many of the large companies of the world, the Fortune 500 companies, are setting up their GCCs, which, as we said, is going to be one of the areas for growth when it comes to hiring tech talent. When you look at Indian tech talent for both of you, and let me start with Prasad this time, that do you see that India will have an advantage when it comes to building talent, or buying talent, or developing talent? Which of these three is going to be India's big opportunity? What do you say?
I clearly developing talent is going to be the key. Couple of things, and also what is also helping is the regulations. I may sound very opposite, but I think in India the regulations, the regulated development of tech startups is going to be the sustainable, because we have seen a lot of tech startups without which are not regulated doesn't last for long. So I think in India the regulation by the brain power we have and the startup ecosystem, these three parameters will help us to be developing a lot of the new age products for the world. Yeah.
Kamal, what is your view? Is it going to be build versus buy? And I know you have written quite extensively about that. So, Kamal, what's your take?
Yeah, we like, keep talking about build, buy, and borrow of talent. And build definitely, as we say, if you have hundreds of thousands of engineers or passing out, we also know that not everybody is job ready. So, which means that what the Infosys, TCS, and Wipros have done over a period of time, decades of time, where they've got them into their campuses, trained them for 6 months, 8 months, a year or so, and then put them on live projects, and that's when they became, let's say, job ready. And that's what most enterprise have done, especially the Indian IT services and the MNC IT services have done in India. Had thousands of engineers. In a bad year, they've had 200,000 engineers to train their freshers. And in a good year like 2021, they had 600,000 fresh engineers and trained them. Right.
Wow.
So build as a model, India has tremendous strengths. There is institutional knowledge, capability that we can just turn it around when the demand comes next. So if you see, like in the current context today, where enterprises need more skilled talent, you can see there is a bit of a pressure where organizations are not going to campuses. That's because they want job-ready talent, and that's where they're all buying. And if you look at the different cohorts that I mentioned, typically GCCs and product companies are preferring to buy. But even IT services companies last year prefer to buy talent. That means what they call as lateral talents, people who have experience who can hit the ground running. So I think from an India context, both build and buy coexist. But you have to remember that for the longest time, we have been a country which deployed the borrow model very well. When whether it was GCCs or the product companies worked with the IT outsourcing providers or staffing companies and took people just in time, or kind of a try before you hire model when they were not sure whether those projects are going to be long term. And today there's a at least you have 500,000 tech workers working in a contingent mode in India. So the borrow model is still on. So build, buy, borrow are the three ways talent is consumed in India, and I think they'll all coexist in different contexts.
Prasad, where do you see the opportunity to invest? If there is a employer, what would be your advice? Where should they be investing? Is it is it worth training so many people? Is it employability, which is really a question? What's your on the ground
Now,
perspective?
now I agree with Kamal. Long gone are the days where people have the time to take people, train them for 6 months and 12 months. I think largely because the pace of technology is changing fast. You get someone trained for 6 months, by the time the skill sets have changed and are coming back to a skilling thing. So I think training is becoming less. I think people like us will want to have almost semi-finished people and upskill them. Okay, so I agree. The especially from the product companies, we are looking for buy, but buy also doesn't help because we don't get ready-made technology today. So we have to buy, but then again build on that. So I think the build versus build and then develop is changing to buy and then go and develop them further.
Kamal, when you look at the developing talent part of it, and with this, I'm really referring to employability. How do we um, sort of enhance employability of tech talent, specifically because a lot of the technology, as Prasad rightly said, is continuously, changing, improving, becoming better. What needed a human being to be doing in the past is rapidly getting done through the large language models. As we see, generative AI is doing many of those things. What do you think should be the strategy for an employer to think about when it comes to developing talent? What should they do? And what is it that the individual should focus on building for themselves? What is if I had to, ask the two of you about what's the right way an individual should think about it, what should an employer think about it? What's the difference?
Uh, Abhijit, if I had to start with enterprises per se, Indian enterprises, in my view, have not, beyond the point, been very proactive about building their own talent pipeline. Because somewhere we work with the notion that there is plenty of supply, and if I'm really pressed for time, I'll possibly buy talent. And we always had this opportunity to buy talent at 30% more, and many of us have scaled around that. Uh, Unlike the IT service companies, which have traditionally built talent, and we know that there's a very large cohort working outside of the IT services cohort, right? So we only have close to 2.3, 2.4 million working in IT services. So you still have a good 4 million IT workers working outside of that. I think these enterprises who are outside the IT outsourcing cohort really need to look at building talent. That means which are the academic institutions that they will really invest in. All of us know to go to the best institutes, whether it is IITs or other premium institutes like NITs. We pick talent and come, and training them is far easier because they've had such a kind of a filtration process to get in that you're likely to get a reasonably ready to hit the market kind of a talent. But we have so many other institutes. There are 800,000 engineers passing out, right? So that means how are these enterprises spending time anchoring a few institutes and building their own talent pipeline with the latest skills? Like if you're talking about AI today, are we looking at which are the precursor skills to AI? Are we as enterprise investing with, let's say, academic institutions on, let's say, Python skills, Django skills, AI, ML, SQL, kind of precursor skills to AI are we investing time on? If I'm an enterprise, I would like to ask myself, how many academic institutions do I have a tie-up to build talent? Not where I'll go and hire. Everybody has campuses which they've ticked off saying that, we have a casteism system that we'll go to these campuses. I only go to these campuses and nowhere else. How do I build that relationship and build talent for me on a long-term basis? I would say if I'm an enterprise, that is what I would focus on. And if about talent, clearly, I think today when I looked at the data points of who's upskilling themselves, it seems that people are already working are the ones who are spending more money. Of course, they can possibly afford compared to, let's say, the student community. They are the ones spending more time to upskill themselves in the latest skills. So if, let's say, if I am somebody who's studying computer science and I'm going to pass out in the next 2 years, what are the kind of opportunities that I am going to spend time interning with this, let's say, thousands of tech companies with their product companies, 1600 GCCs, thousands of IT services companies. How am I going to intern and learn the latest digital skills? Can I spend time on, let's say, I've already said this before, of whether it's full stack developing or data sciences or cybersecurity, cloud? Am I actually spending time learning these skills? Because we still know there is a gap between what the colleges teach and what the enterprises want. If I am a student, am I spending time interning on these skills and trying to get something live, even if it's not paid for? So that is what I would urge, if the talent to do if I'm still at a student mode. I think people are already working clearly know what kind of skills they, really their enterprises want because there's a huge pressure for them to learn. Otherwise, they get redundant and they get laid off. So that is clearly known to the already working workforce. So those are two dimensions I would take for enterprises and tech talent.
Prasad?
Yeah, I think Abhijit, I fully agree with Kamal. I think enterprise have been guilty of not investing in creating talent pool beyond what is required. They train. Okay, next I'm going some projects on so and so technology. I build 400 people, 300 people there. So one is upskilling, and second, I think we have been lacking in R&D. I think we have been not spending too much R&D in technology. We almost like relying on technology which has been evolving there from a core. I'm talking of core R&D. So I would just add to that. One is upskilling investment has to happen for the future, not for the current immediate short-term needs. And second, can we do intrinsic R&D on technology to create some niche breakthroughs? These are the two areas I think we would urge all of us a part of it, not just put it on large organizations. All of us I think we need to take up this initiative to do that.
So I would sort of really think about, when you look at the leapfrogging of technology, one of the things that I always talk about is when you look at organizations or countries, when you think about it, historically a country which may have had a certain kind of an advantage, so, and the best way to understand it is when, you used to talk about the three screen model, that country would first get the landlines, and then it would go to mobile, and so that transition from television to desktop to mobile was the standard route in which many of the countries developed. That was the path. Yet when you think about what happened in countries like India, they straight away moved, so much of the infrastructure went straight into mobile. And as a result, countries like India really leapfrogged into that millennium where mobile became the de facto norm. So now if you look at it, that's been the leapfrogging moment. They've leapfrogged two generations of technologies. So while a lot of places did not have television as they would have wanted, or the desktop computer as they would have wanted, they've actually moved on to mobile, and that's now become the de facto model of the world. It's also the same thing that is going to happen, that even if you have not invested historically in development of talent, I think it's an opportunity to leapfrog into and investing in the cutting edge technology, whether it is AI related skills, or I would say every company having two aspects that they need to really invest deeply in. One is, of course, what you do by way of deep tech related investments. How do you do that? Even if your work today doesn't need it, here is a way in which you can leverage the technology to find new marketplaces and new ways of doing things. The second, I would say, is investing in the people skills, the human skills which is there, either whether it's critical thinking, the ability to communicate, the ability to present data. And we've not done enough in investing in those kind of skills either. So I think this two pronged skilling approach is going to become absolutely critical for every employer as we are looking at this entire thing. So before we end, I just wanted to say that, do you have a closing thought that you want to leave for people to mull about? Any data point, any closing thought, any ideas? Let's start with you, Kamal.
I think the third part, Abhijit, I would add to what you said is also developing language skills. It's not good enough just you know English, and I think Indians we have a penchant for languages. We speak so many languages anyhow. Somebody like me in Bangalore speaks five languages. Of course, mostly Indian, but that means that we can absorb more. And if we want to really cater to international audience, even though tech has only one language, I think we can possibly make more bridges and ensure that some of these talent movements and work movements that's happening can also be hastened by learning more languages. I think that's something which is not happening at scale, and I think we should encourage that. That's what I would say from a additional point of what else can be faster to make India the talent hub.
Oh, I love that idea. That, I think as people become multilingual, and most people in India have an inherent advantage that we naturally speak so many languages. So your brain is already, ready and capable of learning that. You're saying add more languages of other countries, which enables you to find opportunities in those countries. So, yeah, absolutely a terrific suggestion. Prasad, what would be your big suggestion? You're on mute.
I think if technology can help us to divide the gap between the 8 billion populations on this globe, economically and otherwise, I think then we would have done justice to the evolution of technology. Okay, gap in terms of not just livelihood, but the way look at living, way we look at environment and society. If technology can play a role there, and then we are in a better place to live.
So I would say that don't just learn it yourself, but if you teach, you not only become much better at it, but you also spread the knowledge, and you're sort of going to take part in the skilling, revolution of India. I think that's a great opportunity. I always, tell people that if you were to really ask about the hallmark of patriotism, I would say teaching somebody who doesn't have a skill to pass on a skill is the greatest hallmark of patriotism in today's world. And with that, thank you so very much. I so appreciate your being here, and would love to continue the conversation at another time on the same platform. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
Thank you.